Good evening, everyone. My name is Caitlin Martin. I'm chairwoman of the GW College Republicans, and I want to welcome you all to an evening with Governor Jon Huntsman, candidate for the Republican nomination for president. It's no secret. It's no secret that we go to the premier political university in the country, and our students are at the forefront of DC's political shakings and happenings. The College Republicans are dedicated to bringing you the most prominent conservative speakers and leaders that this town has to offer, especially during this busy primary season. While we as an organization do not officially endorse any particular primary candidate, we are so very excited to have Governor Huntsman here tonight to share his views for this country under his leadership. I want to especially thank a general member, Dan Horning, for helping to put this event together. And now, I would like to introduce Dan Horning to introduce the governor.
Caitlin, thank you for that very warm welcome, and thank all of you for coming out here tonight. I know most people don't spend their Tuesday evenings during midterms sitting in an auditorium, but this is going to be well worth it. Fresh off his recent visit to the Colbert Report, I'm honored tonight to introduce Governor Jon Huntsman to speak to you. He is the first and only presidential candidate to visit George Washington University this academic year, so you all are very special in that he is your first candidate here tonight. Governor Huntsman is a successful two-term governor who led Utah to become #1 in job creation and led Utah to become the best named and best managed state in the union by the Pew Research Group. He is the only candidate to have his jobs and tax plan endorsed by the Wall Street Journal. Governor Huntsman served our nation 3 times overseas as U.S. Trade Representative and Ambassador to Singapore and China. He is fluent in Mandarin Chinese. He has worked for a total of 4 U.S. presidents, Republicans, and a Democrat. He embodies what so many members of his youth movement, Gen H, believe in. Basic math, fiscal solvency, and no-nonsense leadership. If you like what you hear tonight, we have a sign-up table in the back. I had to give in that promotion somehow. Please join me in welcoming one of America's finest governors, finest statesmen, a former garage band pianist, and a motocross rider, Jon Huntsman, to the stage.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dan. I didn't expect the rousing welcome. Thank you so very much. We got the Colbert bump last night, and all I want is a GW bump, if you can provide that for me. And I like to tell folks when I bring family members along that if you can't find anything to like about me, and I totally understand if that's the case, you're going to find something to like about my daughters, and I want them to stand up. Abby, stand up. Marianne, stand up. Liddy, stand up. And if you can't find anything to like about them, you're crazy. I'm honored to be here with you tonight. I just want to share a few thoughts. I don't have anything scripted. I don't have anything planned. I don't want to pander. I don't want to do pledges. I don't want to do that kind of. I just want to be frank with you. I'm reminded a little bit in terms of where we are today because I just had a chance to meet with some of your school leaders in the adjoining office. And I looked at all these sharp, smart, well-informed students, like all of you are. And I said, I remember when I was standing in your place, and people said, soon, you're going to be in a position of responsibility. And I thought, no how, no way. I'm too young. That day will never come. I'm here to tell you that day will come. And you'll have to stand up and assume some responsibility for your country, as I know you will. And I don't care what your political affiliation is. I don't care what your background is. we all come together as Americans. Thank you. I hate the divide in this country because being divided as Americans is not natural. It's un-American. It's not consistent with who we are as blue sky optimists. We're problem-solving people. We confront an issue, we confront a challenge, we find solutions, we make the place better, and we move on. And we leave the world a better place. That's who we are. So being in a funk, being down and discouraged and dispirited as we are today, this is not natural for Americans. I just have to tell you that. It's like we've lost our engines of confidence, we've lost our engines of hope and optimism. I'm reminded a little bit, if I can share a little vignette from aviation history. Back in June of 1982, if you remember your aviation history, a Boeing Air 747 left London en route to Sydney, Australia, under the command of Captain Moody. Went all the way to Singapore to refuel, Flight 009, as I recall. Refueled in Singapore, got up to cruising altitude, was moving over this vast archipelago that is Indonesia, over Java, where Mount Galunggung had exploded the day before, spewing sulfuric ash into the atmosphere. And this plane went into it at cruising altitude, true story. And it lost not one, not two, not three, but all four of its engines. A massive Boeing 747, thereby making it the largest glider in the history of aviation as it started to descend over Java. You can imagine the fear. And the captain of the ship got on the PA system, Captain Moody. And he said, ladies and this must have been the understatement of British English. He said, ladies and gentlemen, we have a small problem. We've lost power to all four of our engines. We are doing our damnedest to get them refired. We hope this has caused you no inconvenience. And then an historic thing happened as well, and I hope the same thing happens in our country. The engines were refired. Not one, not two, not three, but all four of them, and off it went to Sydney, Australia for a safe landing. When I look at where our country is today, losing our engines of growth economically, losing our engines of optimism, I feel kind of like I'm sitting in that plane that's going down a little bit. And I say we can do better as a country. But I don't want anyone leaving this hall at this great university without understanding why it is that I'm running for President of the United States. Because I know why a lot of people turn out at gatherings like this. They want to take a look at someone who's crazy enough to run for president. And they take a look at you and they say, you look pretty normal. You sound pretty sane. What gives? I'm running for President of the United States because for the first time in our history, we are about to pass down the greatest nation that ever was to your generation. First time, less good, less productive, less competitive, and more divided than the country we got. And I say this is a first. We have a tradition in our country of passing upward. You know what I mean? We hand upward our aspirations, our goals, our economic indicators, and they're always positive. And now we're handing it down. And I say, regardless of where you come from politically, if that doesn't motivate you enough to get out and learn the issues, because the debt, folks, is coming your way. And if there is one thing that is going to shipwreck your generation, if we don't take care of it, it is debt. You see, when a country gets 80, 90, 100% debt to GDP, which is where we are, economically, you just don't grow. So what is the consequence? The consequence is you end up like Japan. You have a lost decade. Japan is in its third decade of lost economic growth. So here's what I want to do. I think this country has an unprecedented opportunity to rebuild our manufacturing muscle You know what I mean? When I was born in 1960, we exported $3 for every $2 we imported. We owned 36% of the world's GDP. We own science, we own technology. It seems that all of the Nobel Prize winners came from this country. Our GDP was fueled by 25% that came from manufacturing. 25%. Today we're at a paltry 9%. And I go up to these great communities in New Hampshire, like in Berlin, and I see these carcasses, these remains of the last industrial revolution. And I say, we did it before. These buildings were once filled with activity and workers who were making great products. Those products that were stamped with the Made in America logo. It's like we've lost our commitment. We've lost our confidence in who we are. We can fill these buildings again with workers. We can take the situation today and we can rebuild our manufacturing muscle. And we need to rebuild our manufacturing muscle. So here's the deal. You know, I've lived for 2 years in China. I've lived 4 times overseas, starting in the late 1970s. Lived in Asia 4 times. And I've been an ambassador for my country 3 times. And I say, we have a rare opening in economic history here. China, instead of experiencing 8, 9, 10% economic growth rates for the last 30 years running, is going to be looking like more 4, 5, 6% economic growth rates. What happens when growth rates stall in China? Unemployment rises. What happens then? You have greater political instability. What happens then? That investment dollar for manufacturing that knee-jerk goes into China because of costs. Well, costs are going up. Folks, take a look at labor rates. Take a look at inflation. Take a look at what political instability might bring. And that investment dollar is going to look for an alternative marketplace. And I say, we have an opening, folks. We have an opportunity in this country. I don't care what your political background is. I don't care where you come from. We all want to get back on our feet economically. And if we are smart, we will say, what has happened to this marketplace? We have lost our ability to attract capital, to keep good ideas in this marketplace, and to make them into products and then jobs. And I say, let's lift up the hood of the car in this country, and let's see what is broken in terms of the structural problems. And you know what we're going to find? We're going to find that our taxes are outdated, they are dilapidated, they are anachronistic, like when I was governor. I was elected governor in 2004. I say, we have a pretty good state, folks, but we don't have the #1 state in America. We want the #1 state in America. Why didn't we have the #1? So because we had some structural problems. Our college graduates were not always hanging around. Entrepreneurs were not as active as they should have been. And we weren't getting investment from the outside. So if capital is a coward, if it flees wherever it perceives there to be risk in the marketplace and finds a safe haven somewhere else, if you're not that safe haven for capital, something's wrong. You've got to fix it. We've got to fix this marketplace. And all I want to do is some of the things that I did as governor of a state that we took to #1 in job creation. We made it the best managed state in America. Thank you. We started getting teachers what I thought they were worth. You can't pay teachers enough. They're special people in your community, but we couldn't afford the things we really wanted to do because the economy wasn't working. We fixed that. And I say we can do the same thing for this country. Thank you. So I put forward an economic proposal that starts with taking this tax system and saying on the individual income side, we're going to phase out loopholes and we're going to phase out deductions. And is it going to be easy, folks? No, of course it's not going to be easy. We created a flat tax in my state under my governorship. Took us a couple of years. We got it done. One of the few states in America that actually did that. Thank you. I want to phase out the loopholes and the deductions on the individual income side, and I want to take it down to 8, 14, and 23%. We haven't touched our tax code since 1986, folks. And in the meantime, you better believe that our toughest competitors internationally, I know I've lived in some of those countries, they've gone through changes that make them a whole lot more competitive. And I say on the corporate side, I'm just guessing that there's some companies in this country that aren't paying 35% because they've got loopholes. There's corporate welfare. They can afford lawyers and lobbyists on Capitol Hill to just gum up the system. And I say, I want to take care of that. You want to deal with lobbyists on Capitol Hill and their undue influence? You phase out corporate welfare. You phase out the loopholes for corporations. You phase out subsidies. And you say, thank you. And you recognize reality for what it is, and you say, we're not going to pay 35%, we're going to pay 25%, and create a level playing field for entrepreneurs, a creative class, our innovators, the Steve Jobs of tomorrow, and say, let's recognize the fact that we've got to compete in this world. So economically, we can get it done. It starts with somebody who actually is a practitioner in fixing taxes. My good friend Rick Perry talked about a flat tax today. I'm okay with a flat tax, but you know what? For Rick, it's an option because he still keeps the old system. So if you're gaming the tax system based upon loopholes and deductions, you're going to keep gaming the system. And all I'm saying is the tax system of yesterday, it's done. It's gone. We're phasing everything out. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And we're going to fix the system that says we've got way too much in the way of regulatory barriers. We're going to repeal Obamacare. Thank you. And people say, what are you going to do? Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call the 50 governors together, and I'm going to say, folks, we all want to fix health care. We can't do it overnight. It's big and complicated, but I remember as governor, we took 3 years, and we took some incredibly important steps in our own state in addressing cost containment, in addressing harmonizing medical records, and addressing closing the gap on the uninsured. It can be done. The 50 states are the incubators of our democracy. Let's take some time and do it right. Thank you. And then I'm going to say that Dodd-Frank thing must go. Thank you. Why is that? Because it makes it tough to get the lifeblood of our economy to small businesses, which is capital. And number two, I say we've got a situation emerging in this country which is called banks that are too big to fail. If you're too big to fail, what happens? You've got 6 banks. They're 66% of our GDP in terms of what they have in assets. $9.4 trillion worth. I say if you have a $2 trillion institution go south, we all go south. Capitalism without failure isn't capitalism. And when you have a situation today where banks are too big to fail, they take everybody down, I say you can fix housing, you can fix taxes, you can fix the regulatory environment, you're still left with 6 institutions. If any of them fail, we're toast. And I say, we've got to address this thing. We've got to get back to the day and age like the 1990s where our largest institutions combined were not 66% of our nation's GDP, but more 20% of our nation's GDP. Then I'm going to say number 3. And in case you're wondering what I would do on day 1, being elected president, this is what I would drop off on the doorstep of Congress. I'd say those taxes, we can fix them. Regulatory reform, 2 or 3 steps, it can get done. It is the will of the people. And number 3, I'd say, how long do we want to maintain this heroin-like addiction to imported foreign oil? It is time, ladies and gentlemen, that we deal realistically with it. We wake up to the reality that this country has more natural gas than Saudi Arabia has crude oil. And I say, how stupid are we? When are we going to get with the picture and say we can start converting to transportation for natural gas? How do I know? Because I was one of those crazy governors who converted his Suburban to natural gas use. That's how I know. And I'd say, and we can convert over to power and electricity more and more, and we can convert over to manufacturing, of which is only 19% today that is being used. We can use that which we have in abundance, and we can do it in an environmentally friendly way. Everybody wants to leave a legacy that's worthy of the next generation. I do, first and foremost. But we can draw from our own. It's affordable. It is clean. And you know what else I like? I like the national security implications. Because I Because I think that transfer of $300 billion a year to unpredictable corners of the world is totally unacceptable. And I say, we as the most innovative, creative people on earth can do better than that, and we will do better than that. Thank you. So the economics we're going to take care of. I have no doubt about that. We're going to get this country's manufacturing muscle back in working order. And in turn, we're going to create the jobs that this country so desperately. We can do it. It's the will of the people of this country get it done. We just need a plan. We need a little leadership. We need a president who's going to step out from behind the teleprompter and point the direction and say, folks, get on the bus. We're moving on. Thank you. Thank you. Category number 2 that I just want you to remember as you walk out of here. I want to have a 21st century foreign policy. Now, I've lived overseas 4 times, as I mentioned earlier. You're not going to find any other candidate who spent any time overseas, maybe, a trip here or there, who's been a practitioner of foreign policy. And all I say when I look at the world is we still have a little bit of the overhang from the Cold War. You know what I mean? That George Kennan view of the world circa 1946, I look at Germany and I say, 50,000 troops in Germany? Folks, the Russians aren't coming anymore. I say we've been at the war on terror for 10 years. This nation has given its all. And some families have paid a very high price. Somebody asked me a little while ago, what was the hardest thing, Mr. Governor, you ever had to do when you were governor? I said, let me tell you what the hardest thing was I ever had to do. They thought it was going to be some major fight with the legislature or some major policy initiative, and we got a lot of interesting things done, even alcohol reform in the state of Utah, where nobody thought we'd ever get that done. And here's the hardest thing I ever had to do. I traveled over to Kabul, Afghanistan as governor to visit my forward deployed National Guard troopers. Because as governor, you're the commander-in-chief of the National Guard. And that was a great honor for me. I have 2 boys who are wearing the uniform of their country, and I respect that and I salute that. And I arrived in Kabul, and somebody from the embassy came to me and said, one of your guardsmen was shot and killed the day before. Will you speak at his memorial service tonight? I said, of course I'll speak at his memorial service. I never met the man. I'll never forget his name, Second Lieutenant Scott Lundell. And I showed up in an auditorium about this size, and there were, 200 or 300 wary, bedraggled, uniformed soldiers who'd all been out in the field that day to pay respects to a fallen brother. And I stood up and I did my best to eulogize Second Lieutenant Scott Lundell, to thank his family, who were not there, obviously, for the ultimate sacrifice. And in front of me were his boots, his rifle, and a few things that were near and dear to him. Happened out on the Pakistani border. And then I did something that was even harder than that. I gathered his personal belongings in a bag in which he had a Bible that was his personal family Bible. He had notes from his kids. And he had some tokens from the military that were near and dear to him. And I took that bag back to Utah with me. And then I drove out to his wife's home. And I knocked on her door. And she answered with 4 kids. Didn't have a dad anymore. And I took that bag and I handed it over and I said, on behalf of a grateful state and a grateful country, I want to express our love and appreciation for a family that has given the ultimate sacrifice. And I handed the bag over and gave her a hug. Then I hugged those kids. And I'll never forget what she said to me, because I was on the verge of breaking down as governor. And she turned to me as sturdy, strong, and stoic as one could be. And she said, my husband died doing what he believed was right for his country. That was all I needed to hear. All I needed to hear about what makes this country great. But I reflect on that front door incident when I think of the price this nation has paid over the last 10 years. We paid a big price, folks. And I say, let's recognize what is happening in Afghanistan We don't need to be nation building in Afghanistan with 100,000 troops when this nation so desperately needs to be built. We need a presence in Afghanistan that speaks to the asymmetric threat. It's a counter-terror threat. We need more in the way of tactical intelligence. We need special forces capabilities, and we need ongoing training needs. We don't need 100,000 troops. We need to bring those men and women home. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I say beyond that, all I want the second decade into the 21st century is a foreign policy that says we're going to lead by economics. We're going to do what a whole lot of other countries have done for a long time and we haven't always picked up on. We're going to lead by engaging the world in free trade and investment in international economic relations, and we're going to do that which plays right back to our core, expands our economy, and creates jobs. And we're going to remember, number two, we have an ongoing asymmetric threat called terror out there. We must remain vigilant. What I described we need in Afghanistan, we're going to need in a lot of other parts of the world. Whenever we have the threat, which is now part of subsidiaries in a lot of corners of the world, when they come up, we take them down. And you know what? Thank you. And I think Israel's going to stand up and say, I can relate to that. Economics, counter-terror. We need to remind Israel what it means to be a friend and ally of the United States. And you're going to have India stand up and say, I can relate to that too. Why don't we deepen and strengthen our ties in a meaningful way that brings us together not only economically, but from a security standpoint as well, so we can bolster a region that is more and more fragile. Ladies and gentlemen, all I want to do is leave you with this thought. Living for 2 years over in China, and listen, I know there are some Republicans who look at me and they say, that Huntsman guy, no way, no how would I ever vote for him. He worked for a Democrat. And I say, I worked for a Democrat. I was asked by my president to serve. I worked for President Reagan. I worked for President Bush. I worked for President Bush. I'm of the firm belief, folks, that when your president asks you to step up and serve during a time of war, during a time of economic hardship, you stand up and you put your country first. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But I reflect on my 2 years in Beijing, because you walk the streets of Beijing, you walk the streets of Shanghai, you walk the streets of Guangzhou in this remarkably, rapidly developing country. And there's energy, there's blue sky, there's enthusiasm. It's like the world has arrived and it's theirs. And you reflect on this country from 10,000 miles away. Folks, we are in a funk. We are dispirited. This is not natural for the most creative, most optimistic, most problem-solving people on earth. We've got to get out of the hole we're in. It's totally doable. And then you reflect from 10,000 miles away on what this country has going for it. I say, we've got everything a country needs to succeed. We don't recognize that sometimes. We have stability. I mean, how great is it to have stability in today's environment? We have the longest surviving Constitution in the world. We have rule of law. We have private property rights. Last I looked, I think we still have private property rights. We have the greatest universities and colleges in the world. I'm standing right here at one of them. And you know what? People from all corners of the world still come to these great universities because they are the best and they're the envy of the world. We have the most creative, energetic, entrepreneurial, and innovative people on earth. We have the greatest research and development centers anywhere in the world. We have the bravest and most courageous armed forces our country's ever seen. And we're sitting here dispirited. We can pull it together, folks. We just need a little leadership. We need a plan. We need someone to point the direction. It's totally within our grasp. So President Obama ran and won in 2008 on a thing called hope. And I say you can win on a mantra. That doesn't mean you can lead when a nation so desperately needs leadership. We're running and we're going to win this next election cycle based on leadership and real solutions for the American people. Thank you all so very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Governor.
What a downgrade.
Governor.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We would like to make you an honorary member of the GW College Republicans for Life. So we'd like to present you with this t-shirt and these sunglasses.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to see you again.